things that stood out to me about the really good improvement that the PLDA has done from even going from last year to this year, the number of competitors is definitely up. I thought the agreement, the relationship with the JPDA in Japan to have the women's there, I thought that was really exciting. I wish I could have gone there just to, experience it, see the culture, meet the people, stuff like that. And I think there will be some tweaks probably format wise going forward. But it's growing. To have 128 good competitors and multiple divisions and stuff like that, it's really cool. So.
Yeah, it was good. It was good for us. It was good for us to see that growth for us, just to kind of, I guess, reassure the fact that what we're doing is somewhat working. To get it back to 128 players was awesome. To add the super senior division was very good. To get to see some old faces come out and be able to compete and hit the ball. Like, I know they've been chomping at the bit for that one. Obviously had a stacked senior field. The amateurs was even crazier. I feel like just the fact that we got 32 amateurs and filled that field and had some solid, some hitters there. Hopefully those guys, see the potential of what they could be, and they want to, jump ship and that perpetuates your sport. It perpetuates your hitters and your hitter pool and your competitors. And that's what we like to see.
That's one of the things, the development. Like I'm sure when you got into it, there probably was not an amateur side of it. Maybe there was back then. Not for me. I just learned about long drive. Of course, I saw it on TV and everything growing up. And then I tried it to qualify for the open division, and I got in, and that was how I started. I didn't know anything about amateur long drive or whatever. And now it's really awesome to have that and you're seeing a lot of the amateur people make the step up. Obviously, Scotty Pierman was one of the guys we had on here, and he has a really cool story of going from amateur to pro. Cody Billinghurst. There's a number of guys that are really doing that. And off topic a little bit, but I think that's one of the things that's a little bit maybe disappointing about like some levels of pro golf. Like, to get onto the PGA Tour, there's one or two routes, and they're not the most accessible. To go through Q school or whatever, it costs, $20,000 or $50,000. I don't know what it is.
But if you don't have a backer for that, you're not playing the best golf of your life. You're just wasting. You're going to waste 15, 20, 25,000. Yeah.
If you don't have Q school paid for by somebody, or you, whatever, have been trading some cryptocurrencies or something, you can pay for it. Yeah. Or then you have to go and do a Monday qualifier and shoot your best round ever. And, shoot a 60, well, it may not be best round, but you got to be lights out that day. And I think that's going back then to long drive. It's really cool that there are routes to get in. There are ways to qualify in what seems to be a very judicious manner. Like, anybody can show up and do it. And as of right now, like Ryan said on the last podcast with Bobby, anybody can sign up in the open division and be hitting against the best in the world right now. And it allows people to kind of come out of nowhere and all of a sudden be a star.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. When I first started, there was no amateur. Perfect example, 2010, I'm in the final 8. I finished 5th that year. Dominic Mazza, who claimed amateur status because he was going to go play college baseball. So, and actually was picked up, I want to say, by the Cincinnati Reds. I think he went and played a few years in college, and then he was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds. So he wanted to maintain amateur status, and he actually finished second. That's when Joe Miller won his first world championship that year. He finished second. So, so there was no amateur division, so to speak. It was just sign up. If you wanted to keep your amateur status, you had to claim that before the tournament started. So I think the way that we're doing it now is, with having an actual division so guys can hone their skills, they can test the waters. And we've had guys like Colton Kalkanis and like Cody Billinghurst. We've had guys like Kyle Gabbard, obviously 2021 amateur world champion. They hit in the open division all the time, just to simply hit with the big boys, to test and see where they're at, and Cody has jumped to the pro division now. I think Colton he finished the year. He finished the year as an amateur. He is going to be a professional next year. I'm not sure what Kyle's going to do. He's sometimes he's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but he's a solid competitor. He's obviously honing his skills, and obviously Scotty's the one that everybody knows, where he came from being a 2-time amateur world champion to being a tour winner on the PLDA, finishing top 8 this year. I mean, he's just a solid competitor. So it's awesome to see guys, put their skills on the line and test their skills. It's awesome to see that, because like you said, alluding to professional golf, there's guys that shoot lights out all the time that everybody knows and that will never, ever sniff, the PGA Tour, guys with conditional status that can go to every Monday. And if they don't have the hottest putter on the weekend, they don't make it to the tournament.
I'm blanking on his name right now. I wish we could look it up real quick, but I think he Monday qualified into like 5 or 6 PGA events this year, made the cut at the US Open. And like, that's a phenomenal season.
Was that Zalatoris?
No.
Cause I thought he was good to go.
Yeah, no, he's good to go. Cause I think he won a couple weeks ago, but somebody else, I can't remember his name right now. I'm blanking on it, but that's an incredible season and a massive accomplishment to do all those things. But then he didn't have status and he wasn't going to be going forward. And it's just like, how does that work? How is that the best way that you can set up the system? Which then makes me excited for something like Live, where people can come in there, and I know they're going to be releasing some sort of like a qualifying process and stuff where more people will be invited to be on the Live Tour. But I mean, it's great to see it pop up, if for no other reason, just for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you've got to have something that helps you perpetuate your competitor and your player pool. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Otherwise, I think if you don't have something to that effect, I think you run into kind of what the Golf Channel was kind of doing, where like the top 50, or the top 35 guys, in the world rankings got first crack at an event. So if you were outside of that, you just didn't have an opportunity to compete, and I'll second what Ryan said. Like, anybody can sign up. If they want to sign up and pay their money to hit in the open division, it's called the open division for a reason. It is open to everybody. So it doesn't matter, if they're 16 or if they're 16 or if they're 56, if they want to put their money up and hit and they want to test it out, then they have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm. So we just kind of, blew into it here. Thanks for being on here, Landon. But
it's all good.
So first of all, how many years have you been in long drive?
My first year was 2005.
Okay. Yeah. And how'd you get started? Was it a similar thing, like you hit it far, you played golf, or how did that come about? Excuse me for a second. I want to tell you real quick about my favorite training aid and a sponsor of the podcast, the Lag Shot. It's designed with what they call lag flex technology that'll help you to create and maintain more lag in your swing, which will give you better consistency and more speed, which we all want, right? But my favorite part is that you can go out and actually hit balls with it. It's a real club. They make a driver, a 7-iron, and a wedge. So you can incorporate it into your practice sessions to ingrain the better technique that it's teaching you. Once you try it, you'll see why I love it. Go to lagshotgolf.com/crush or click the link in the description below to get 15% off. lagshotgolf.com/crush.
So I had watched the Remax World Long Drive Championship on Christmas Day since I was a kid. Like, I used to go to my uncle's house and we would watch it every Christmas Day because that's when it aired on ESPN. And I remember, I think like 96, which was Zuby's first year, his first win. And my uncle always told me, and I still talk to him to this day, and I have to call him to give him an update about how the World Championship went. But he said, one day I'm going to put you in long drive and make some money off of you. Just completely joking. And I played baseball in college and got done with baseball, just knew I wasn't going to go any further than where I was at. And I came home. I was watching a rerun one day. And my buddy's like, dude, you hit it a long way. Why don't you go try it? And I went to the PGA Superstore at the World Golf Village in St. Augustine and got fitted for a driver, which my brother actually still has. It's a McGregor MacTech. And I went to my first qualifier. I hit it like 388 was like 35 yards further than anybody else. Qualified first. And back then, the way that it worked, if you won a local qualifier, you got a first round bye at a regional. So that was huge. And I was hooked ever since. Like, I just didn't stop. And then, back then it was, I don't want to say it was like a good old boys club, but like if you didn't know the right people, or if you beat some people that you weren't supposed to beat, like I did at my first qualifier, you didn't really get blacklisted. You just kind of weren't spoken to, but it was good. And I think I showed up with like 17 people. I honestly want to say I had like so many people with me. People were like, who the hell is this kid? It was like a drug at that point, because I went from being competitive, when you play a different sport at a higher level and then you come to long drive, it's the same competitive juices, right? Like you're still a competitor, whether it's baseball or football or tennis or lifting or whatever, you know what I mean? The one thing how I describe the sport to people is it's like, 128 alpha egos,
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's really what it is. You're dealing with 128 guys that want to kill each other, but then when they get off the tee box, they're high-fiving and hugging and eating dinner together. So it's unique in that aspect.
I feel like that's been hard for me to keep, because I know the primal part, that like the massive rush of adrenaline and everything like that. But because I have a tournament golf background, I think I've treated long drive in some instances, not always, of course, but some instances more like golf, where like you're making a good swing, you're hitting a good shot. But in anything else, like wrestling or boxing, like you're going to be an animal. You're just going to attack. You're going to be an athlete. And you have to, I think, ride that line, because if you go too far that way, you'll probably hit some errant shots. You just won't make an efficient swing. But then, of course, too far on the technical side, and you're just going to be slow, and you're not going to hit a long enough drive to win. So
right.
It's a weird line to ride.
I remember one year when I finished third when Ryan Winther won in 2012. I remember my motto that year was like, be a mellow beast. And I know that's weird to say, but it was like, you have to go beast mode when you're on, like you said, it's a line, right? You have to go almost to the edge to where you're going to fall off, but not fall off. You know what I mean? You have to stretch it all the way to the edge and be able to have that killer instinct, but not go too far to where you lose sight of what you're trying to accomplish, which is hit a golf ball efficiently and far.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's still a fine motor movement to a large extent.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I tell people you don't swing faster by swinging harder. You swing faster by swinging better.
That's so counterintuitive. And that's something still to this day I struggle with, where it's like anything else. You go to the gym. Okay, yeah, I know how to put in more force. I know how to work a little bit harder. Running, I know how to sprint a little bit faster. But in golf, sometimes it's the opposite. You make an easy swing and everything just flows and it whips and the club is faster and the ball flies better.
It's nuts. I remember Bobby Wilson, who is a legend, 3-time world champion, stuff like that. So what he told me, he said, because I was up there and he saw me and he's like, you know what you did wrong, right? And I was like, and it's right after I lost. It's honestly right after I lost a tournament. And so I come off and I'm mad, you know what I mean? Like knowing I should have won. And he's like, you know what you did wrong, right? And I was like, yep. And he's like, that's what he told me. He's like, you always are going to swing faster by swinging better, not harder. And it's something that's kind of, stuck with me. And it's something that Bobby and I, Bobby Peterson and I have worked on. I mean, Bobby and I have worked together since, I don't know, we met in 2009 and I want to say he started building clubs like 2010 and we started working on things together. And then, I put 2 and 2 together. I was thinking to myself, like, Tiger Woods has got a coach and he's like the number one guy in the world. Like he's the best golfer in the world right now. And, he's even got a coach. So like, let's get a coach, and that's where Bobby came in. But yeah, I mean, everybody tries to wring the neck of the golf club when they want to go faster. And I just laugh because I just watch them go absolutely slower or they'll hit a shot that doesn't touch the planet.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to do. It's really easy to say, oh, swing easy, let your body whip through, let the club head do the work. But no, if you're standing up on the tee and you've got to beat 410, like you're going to put a lot of force into that club.
Absolutely.
And of course you have to, ultimately, I think in order to do well, you have to be, there's that like cognitive dissidence, whatever, where you are doing what you maybe don't feel like you're doing. And you're putting a ton of force into the club, but it's in the right sequence. So it just kind of flows naturally. And of course there's the whole mental flow. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that goes into it, but yeah, it's a wild ride.
It's crazy. Long drive is just like golf, right? Like they always say, it's like the hardest sport. And then one day, the guy that shoots 72 one day, he loves it, and he comes up, 2 days later and shoots, shoots 82.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, I'm never going to come back and play again. Long drive's the same way. There's some days where you're super fast, and there's some days where you're just like, why do I feel like, a lump and I'm not moving? And that's just the way that it goes, unfortunately.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever have more like insight, like maybe whatever, in 50 years when everybody has a little Neuralink in their head and you know what's going on. Because some days golf and long drive really is the easiest thing. You just step up and everything happens exactly how you want. And then it is some days the absolute hardest thing ever. So maybe we'll know someday, but I don't know now.
I have a baseball background, so a lot of my stuff is always kind of equated to baseball, and it's like a pitcher, right? So you hope that your curveball is breaking, 2-3 feet on that day. You hope your slider is moving 6 to 8 inches. You hope you're hitting the corners when the catcher sets up for it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's days where you're just throwing straight BP, and guys are just shellacking you left and right. So it's the same way. So
going back to Bobby Peterson, he's putting up his wall of champions, which it takes up like 50 feet because it's a massive.
He's got a lot. He's got
a lot of titles. But your name is on there like all over it. So how many wins do you have in long drive? We can take a minute here because you might need to add it up.
Yeah, I honestly, it's funny. I can't remember. Somebody asked me that the other day, and I tried to count them. And I'm so old now that I feel like I want to say the last count we had, the last count, it was like 16 or 17, I think. Excuse me. I think the only thing that I'm chasing obviously is the world championship. That's the last thing that's on my resume, I guess, that I feel like, not that my career would be complete, but it's like that exclamation point to say, you were the best in the world that year. You know what I mean? At one point, you were the best in the world, and the depth of player and the ability now is so crazy. Obviously with Kyle and Martin and Gregnall being 230 plus guys, do I think that number is maintainable? Personally, I don't think it's maintainable. Not to where you're sitting at 230. Do I think it can be touched?
Do you mean, not to interrupt, but do you mean it's not maintainable in sense of like an injury, or like
like if you're in a tournament, right? Like Kyle and Martin kind of cruise around like the two, and even Ryan, when they're really moving it, they move it anywhere from 223 to 228. They're in that range. You know what I mean? Justin's another one. I don't think it's maintainable for the amount of balls we hit, simply because at those speeds, there's so many variables that come into play that those are perfectly struck golf balls. And swinging at 155 miles an hour, a half a degree is going to affect the way that it's hit.
Yeah.
That's why I say that. And if it ever becomes maintainable, I think it becomes more, and you can maybe relate to this better, it becomes more of a CrossFit type thing where you're doing movements that probably shouldn't be done with that heavy of a weight repetitiously. You know what I mean? Long drive's the same thing. When you get to that certain point, to maintain that, I think injury prevention just kind of goes out the window, because to get to that level, you have to push yourself further than I think the body can withstand. But I may be wrong. I mean, I'm older now, so I can't push it to that. You know what I mean? But maybe
Well,
somebody
I would also ask, is it even necessary? Would you even feel like they would even need to sustain that 230? Because, I mean, there are so many examples of slower hitters hitting a better shot and hitting it farther. So I don't know if it's a limiting fact, like if maybe the ball is, I mean, the Bridgestone ball is fantastic, but if any ball, I mean, would be optimized at a certain speed, or is it just that, like you said, so like you can, if you're hitting it 300 yards, it's pretty easy to hit the fairway or the grid. Right. But if you're hitting it 300 and longer, I mean, so if you're hitting 300 in the fairway, you can miss by X number of degrees, let's say 5, 6, 7 degrees. If you're hitting at 350, that number is exponentially reduced in terms of how much you can miss to keep it in play. So not only keep it in play in long drive, but we also have to then consider what's ideal for the spin, for the launch, for all sorts of things.
Ground conditions, wind conditions,
descent angle,
elevation, fall angle.
So if you're swinging 155 miles an hour, you might hit a perfect shot 1 out of 30. If you're swinging 145, maybe you'll hit 10 or 12, nearly perfect shots out of that, and maybe those would be better.
Yeah, I think where those speeds come into play as far as not necessarily being necessary, but I think where they have the advantage is on mishits. So if you don't hit it on the, if you don't hit it in the hill in the center of the club face, let's say you hit it a little on the toe, excuse me, or you hit it a little bit on the heel, it's your off center hits go just as far as somebody who is a 145, 215, 216, 217 kind of guy, where you heel it, 222 or something, and you're there. You know what I mean? So,
but then you have to be looking probably more at the conditions. Like if it's into the wind, then probably that heel shot, even though it's really fast, it might rise up because of the wind. It might not roll. I talked with this again on the last episode, but I think it was Colton Kalkanis, who was slower than most of the people he was hitting against in the particular rounds that I watched. But he was hitting it just as far or farther. I think he had the longest ball at over 400 for a while. And his speeds were down. So whatever he was doing was optimized for those conditions and hitting the longest ball, which is the name of the game, right?
Absolutely. Like it's not a ball speed competition. You know what I mean? It's not a ball speed competition. It is strictly what number they call back at the end of the day. And I mean, a perfect example was, we'll say May, the Diamond in the Desert. The 3 longest balls were Kyle, who was 439, me at 437, and Sean Johnson, who was 437. Sean Johnson just got, Rookie of the Year. Awesome year for him, first year. Kyle's obviously the 225 all-day guy. Sean is a 220 guy. And you got little old me, it's probably – at that time I was probably like 208, 209, something like that, and hit at 437. So it literally is optimizing the shot needed for the particular grid, the conditions that day, all that stuff like that. And I think once guys start to figure that out, then efficiency comes into play. And then when you start combining efficiency and speed, then you become, and to be honest with you, I think Kyle had it for the first few tournaments this year. He had the efficiency plus the speed. And then I think he's, obviously with the hand injury, didn't help anything. But I think for a while he was probably, the most efficient and the fastest at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's got to be that balance. Was it, so going back to when you were, starting and before I got in the sport, was there as much of an emphasis on the speed? Because I don't think like launch monitors were as accessible.
We didn't really have, Flight Scope had just started to kind of come out. TrackMan was still doing all their testing and things of that nature. You had like full swing monitors and which was, I believe a camera based system. I think the fastest that I ever saw anybody swing was Ryan at the time, Ryan Winther. And I think he went like 156 or 157 and like 227. And that was like the fastest I saw. But like Jamie, right? Jamie at one point was like he was the litmus test for everybody, right? He was super efficient, could hit all 9 shots. really good golfer, and even he's still trying, to allude to breaking out on professional golf, he's still trying to make it on the Canadian tour. So, and I think he was like he kind of hovered around like the 150, 220 to 225 range. And I mean, even the fastest I ever saw him hit it was like, I think 26. So there was and obviously it's different equipment. It was a different ball, all that stuff like that. I'm not sure, I think everybody, put an emphasis on speed, but because there wasn't an abundance of ways to measure it, that nobody really paid that much attention to it, except the high level guys like Jason obviously paid attention to it. Jamie, guys that back then had access to it. Now there's you got Foresight, you got the FlightScope Mevo, you got Bushnell. They all these launch monitors have the ability that are, I wouldn't say inexpensive, but they're way cheaper than a a T4 or an X3. So the ability to measure that and capture that data is a lot more available now. So I think now, but again, I don't know. I always thought to myself, like, I knew when I hit a good one, I knew when I hit a bad one, because I hit so many golf balls. So, and at the end of the day, I was like, I'm just going to go out there, and if I feel like I hit it good and somebody beat me, then they were better than me that day. I didn't care. I didn't think it was it 220 or was it 210. I was like, did I flight it well? I mean, and I'm sure you see it, like when you're at the range and you're hitting golf balls, you're going through, different things, working on different things at the range. When you catch one good and when you catch one bad, just from the abundance of golf shots that you hit.
Growing up, I never used any launch monitor. I don't know, maybe I hit on it like a couple times in my whole life up to 2015 when I started long drive. And then I think all of 2015, 16, and then I don't remember if I started working with Bobby in 17 or 18, but I never looked at any data up to that point. And I think it was a good thing and a bad thing. It was good because just like what we were talking about, when you hit a good shot and what that feels like, what it looks like. And so I was really more focused on that, like just hitting what I know is a good shot. And then of course, if I did that in a tournament, I would win it. I would win the set. I would win whatever. But then I started looking at the numbers and kind of mixed results there. And I think now I'm kind of at like a sweet spot where I have the Mevo Plus, which has been great for me. And I use it in a way where I think probably other people do, but I had never really talked about it before with them, where it's not testing, it's training. So when I would show up to Bobby's and we would look at a TrackMan or FlightScope or About Golf, that would be like testing. It's like going to the gym and trying your one rep max of a deadlift or a squat or whatever. And that's totally different than showing up and training to build up that one rep max. And I think now I'm able to use it in an intelligent way to be training rather than testing. For me, it's been huge. So
yeah, no, and that's a good way to look at it. I think that, you're always going to have different numbers on the tee box versus practice, right? Because you're going to have a little bit more adrenaline. You're going to have a little bit more competitive juices flowing in, whatever you want to call it, right? You have a different mental approach to saying, okay, I'm hitting these 6 balls in practice. I'm going to try to hit these shots. Whereas in a competition, you're like, I got 6 balls to put it in play because I got Kyle on the other end, or I got Steve Coyle on the other end, or I got, whoever on the other end. You know what I mean? I got to put a good ball in play. So, I think it's good to look at it that way. I don't think getting wrapped up to be like, oh my God, I had a terrible session today because I didn't go 220, but you had, 80 golf balls that were 215 plus, where, I don't know. I think that guys get a little too caught up in the numbers nowadays, and they chase a number because they see that as what's winning. And I think if they worked on being more efficient, I think it would help them. It would utilize them, right? It goes back to that being efficient and being fast and marrying the two together. I think if it's just chasing a number, 9 times out of 10, somebody who hits the ball inflates the ball very well, and is slower than you, is going to kill you every time. I've seen it for such a long time that that's just my feeling.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was asking about with people really like measured it or not when you were starting, because you and I have both seen that so much personally and in others where it doesn't equate being faster. And of course, there's a time and place. You should be trying to raise your ultimate speed, but it has to be that blend. And like I have a few clients that I'm working with right now that they want to get better at long drive. And like, so I'm doing their training and, stuff like that. And when it comes to different practice routines and stuff like that for them, I say, really, you should probably hit like more wedges and irons and learn how to control the ball and what to do, because it's not efficient at all right now. The ball flight is not anywhere near where it should be. So your speeds, like keep pushing those, increasing those, but you need to get better at controlling the ball. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, alluding back to like being, if you hit it 300 yards and you're a degree off, I want to say we did the math, and this is, and don't quote me on this, but I think like 1 degree is like 6.4 yards off, right? So, when you're hitting it 390 and you're 2 degrees off on a 50-yard wide grid and you're aiming at the right line, well, technically you want to draw it back to the middle. Well, really, you're only hitting it at a 25-yard wide grid. In reality, you're not using the other 40 or 25 degrees left. So there's so much little things that go into it that I've learned, and I still learn. I always tell everybody, the day that I stop learning or can't figure out what I did wrong is the day that I'll probably quit if my body, doesn't retire me before then. But
I've had a lot of days where I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. So I don't want to quit because of that, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it's, and obviously we're, when you're being an alpha ego, right? You're like your world's biggest critic as well. Like you're like, why you're the worst long driver in the world. People have said Tiger walking down the fairway, he hits a terrible shot. It's like, you're the worst golfer ever. And he was sitting on top of the world, 600 and something weeks or whatever he was at number one. You know what I mean? So, it's tough to not be bad, be hard on yourself, but you got to give yourself some sort of leeway, especially in long drive, just for the simple fact that you're not going to win them all. That's one thing I can tell anybody that's watching. I can tell you, if you're getting in a long drive, I've won 16, 17 times, whatever, and I've lost 5 times as many. Like, and I've won a lot, but it's a way the sport humbles you very, very quickly.
Golf and long drive is very good. They're very good at humbling you. So.
Absolutely.
So, kind of on that topic, but going, throughout your career, I'm sure you've had a number of injuries, right? How do you approach that now? Because I mean, obviously, you're still hitting it hard, hitting it far, like a top competitor. So, how do you overcome those injuries? What's your process there? The
one thing I think that I did that was the most beneficial for me when I first reached number one, the first thing I did, didn't even leading up to then, but was find a chiropractor. Chiropractic medicine, I think, really helped me, just as far as, the amount of, when you're in the gym, 3-4 days a week, when you're hitting golf balls 3 or 4 days a week, you know what I mean? Whatever your schedule is or how you plan it out, you just beat your body up. And people think that golf is not a hardcore sport. And I tell them, okay, well, swing as fast as you can 150 times and tee it up every single time. Bend over, stand up, swing, rotation, torque, do all that stuff like that. And then go to the gym and do everything in the gym to get yourself better. Chiropractic medicine, finding a chiropractor. And I have a great chiropractor. I've been working with him for probably 10 or 12 years, like really. And I see him twice a week just to get an adjustment. If there's anything else that I feel needs to be addressed more, we kind of talk about that. In 2017, I found out I had 4 herniated discs, and I thought to myself, like, I can't even sit. I can't bend over. I couldn't do anything. And it was like, and that was honestly probably the fastest I wouldn't say the fastest. That was probably the most efficient and fastest I ever was in my career. The first 3 tournaments that year, I went 5th, 3rd, 1st. And then I finished, I think I had a top 5 and then like a top 8 that year, I think. And then going into the World Championships, I was like, I was really, really hitting it good. And I thought to myself, like, have I done something now so irreversible because I wasn't going to have surgery or anything like that. So I ended up going to the World Championships. I didn't really do that great. I had K-tape everywhere. I looked really weird teeing the ball up. And but I was able to swing and not have any pain. It was just after I swung. So
how does that work? How can you swing just like physiologically? How does that work? And you just overcoming that, you're not doing like more damage. They said it was okay.
I asked them, I said, if I go, am I going to F up my back even more? It's literally what I asked him. And I remember asking him, I'm like, dude, am I going to, is this the end of my career? That was my other question. He was like, no. He was like, I don't think it is. They gave me some anti-inflammatories to try to just get the inflammation down, just to do it. They basically said, like, from playing baseball and playing golf and lifting and all that kind of stuff like that, like the damage that had already been done, basically. It was just so inflamed that it was the first time that we'd actually seen it, And so now, being older, I kind of have a plan. So like if I go to the gym or if I hit balls, especially going to Bobby's, when we go to Bobby's, it's a whole weekend of just smashing golf balls from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And so I mitigate that by chiropractor. I still take ice baths. Like I was doing cryotherapy for a while, and cryotherapy is great if you go multiple times. If you go once a month, it's not going to help you. I'm going to tell everybody that right now. Just take a good old-fashioned ice bath, suck it up. I took one in Mesquite, like literally at the World Championships. I went back to the condo. I got, 5-6 bags of ice and threw it in the tub and took a nice bath. It sucks every time. It doesn't, they don't get easier, but you learn how to deal with them, right? And it's more just mitigating pain. Like I know if I'm sore, I'm not going to push my body like I used to. Like I just push past it.
That's a hard thing to do. That takes, I think, years in the game and an experience of like, if you have a little injury and you try to push through it and it gets worse, it's almost like you need to, because somebody could tell you that. Somebody's like, hey, if you go hit right now, you're going to make it worse.
Yeah.
And you're thinking in your head, I don't care. I can't take a day off and, slip back where I was. And it just takes a personal experience of like, no, I really, really should rest.
Yeah. Like you have to, you got to listen to your body. You got to listen to your body when you need a day of rest. Take the rest. Rest is any elite athlete, any elite trainer, anybody that's in your profession, training people and stuff like that. They'll say that sleep and rest is the number one recovery factor. And I try to make sure that I get the correct amount of sleep now before I could I've won tournaments. I won a lot of tournaments on like 3 hours of sleep just because flights got delayed and you get in at like 4 or 5 in the morning and it's like you tee off at the tournament starts at 8 o'clock and it's like boom go but it's something that I've had to learn with what I've dealt with, like with the injuries that I've had. I have my right labrum's torn. I believe my left one's torn now. And they're just slight tears. It's nothing like major where it's like, we need to fix this. Otherwise you're just going to do, even more damage. 4 herniated discs, just stuff that's really not good for your golf swing, like things that shouldn't be hurt. But I do a lot of icing, a lot of stretching. I do a lot of mobility stuff and not necessarily so much, where I lift a whole bunch of weight anymore. I'm not going. I remember used to go into the gym and I'd put 400 on the deadlift bar and try to, but that was just not my way of doing it, right? Like obviously Joe, like if you look at Joe Miller, Joe tries to squat a house every time he can, and he's just strong, and that's what helps him. So for me, it was just finding what worked the best, and then kind of tailoring the recovery aspect around it. I probably spend more time on recovery now than I actually do training, just because unfortunately I require that.
Mm-hmm. It's well, you cut out there for a second, so I didn't quite hear all of it, but there really is a lot of variance. Like you were saying, Joe Miller, Jason Zubak, they do a lot of and have done a lot of strength training. And then on the other side, and I've talked about this before, and Kyle, if you're listening, I'm not, insulting you, but he doesn't look quite like Jason Zubak, but he's the fastest guy that's ever hit a golf ball. So
absolutely,
it's there's just different ways to do it. He's strong in different ways. He trains his body a little differently. And of course that works for him and other people. And there's just that trial and error. And I think for me, it's easier to give some advice like that than to take it. Cause the couple months leading up to Worlds this year, I did do a good job of really getting my body more, really like fast twitch. I did not do as much strength training as I wanted to do. And just a variety of different things to peak up at the right time. And, it's tough though. Cause like mentally, I feel like I need to go lift heavy. It's just something I love to do. And I've always really enjoyed it. So I'm sure there are other ways. And like I said, with having the flight scope this year was really big for me because I could kind of make that more of a meaningful workout to go and hit balls and have that be my workout. Where before, if I'm just going out, I'm hitting and I'm putting out what feels like 100% effort. Okay, well, it feels like 100%, but I don't know. So I need to like measure it and say, oh, that was not as fast as a couple swings ago. Let's, keep building on it, keep pushing it. And when I'm lifting, and I don't have a training partner right now, but the guy I trained with for years, we would push each other in a really cool way. And we would use a Tendo unit that measures like the bar speed. So if we're doing speed work, right away we get that instant feedback. Oh, like 1 meter per second or 0.9 meters per second. And then you can really use that as that.
By the way. They suck. When somebody's making you do it and making you go fast, they suck.
See, I love that. I love that little competition where it, like, to be honest, doesn't matter what we're doing.
Right.
Like we could be, making that bed like, okay, who's going to do it faster? Who's going to do it better? I just love that little competition. And it's totally different for me, where if you then have somebody saying, all right, you need to go make it as fast as you can versus just two people who are competing.
Right.
There's that mental difference is huge.
Absolutely. And I tell people, the difference now, I think because the depth, the depth of the talent is so deep now in long drive, the what separates people that win or make top eights, on a regular basis is being mentally able to understand when you get there, what to do. Right. I think, and I'm not picking on Colton. I love Colton to death. Colton is a prime example. Prime example. He is a super fast guy. Hits a what I call a hard golf ball. Just
Colton Casto, not Colton Casto, because we mentioned him earlier. Yeah.
Sorry, Colton Casto, and hits a very hard golf shot. And but he hasn't been there enough at that point to know what it takes. I think he starts to get too amped up thinking, I got to go faster, I got to go harder, instead of just saying, hey, look, just chill out, continue to do what you're doing because it's gotten you to this point. And that's something that I've had to learn, though. I mean, I remember my first event that I won, 2010. I remember telling myself, like, don't, you've been to this point, don't screw up and like overswing, right? Like, You've gotten to this point. Let's just continue to do it. And the next tournament I went and I finished runner up at the next event I went to. And I remember like, don't overswing. You got to this point. Don't do it. You know what I mean? So I think the first, and obviously you learn those things as you get there. Right now, I think it's just tougher to get there because the talent's so much that at any given point that somebody can win the tournament. You know what I mean? There's 30 or 40 different guys out there that could probably win a tournament at any given time. It just, if they're swinging it good that day and the chips fall, you got to have a little bit of luck. I'm not saying that you don't have to have a bounce here or there, because Lord knows I've had my bounces in my career. I used to say, to make it to Final 8, you have to be good. You've got to hit the ball great all day. To make the Final 4, you got to get a little bit lucky. And then to win it all, everything has to line up for you that day. And I stick by that to this day, is the fact that to be in that position, you have to have everything go right for you, but you also have to help yourself and do the right things as well. So,
yeah, for sure. I wonder how it'll be for Colton in a few years, where will he continue to be like very hard on himself and, like you said earlier, being his worst critic, and a lot of people are, but he's very vocal about being his worst critic in the middle of sets. I wonder if he'll continue that way, or like, I know there was a story, I think it was Nolan Ryan, and like he would talk to himself in a positive way. And that's more of like what you would probably hear a lot of coaches like Tony Robbins or whatever, where they would say to ask yourself a question and kind of framed in a positive way. So like, what's the best shot that I can hit right now? I've got 2 balls left. What's the furthest that I can hit one of them? You know, that kind of thing. And Colton is like on the far other end, but maybe that works for him. Because again, going back to individual variety, maybe that's what his mind and body responds best to.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very good point. A very good, I think, like I said, it's so individualized, because it is an individual sport, that some people respond to things differently. Some people need the positive reassurance. And some people need to say, need to be like, you can't do this. And it's like, oh, really? Okay. Like, you tell me I can't do something, right? Okay. Watch. Come back over here. Come over here and sit in them stands and watch, And people just react to things differently. But it all goes back to being able to be in that position and knowing what to do in that position mentally, as it's like they say, I think Tiger, having the 15th club in the bag was his mind, right? Being able to hit a 20-foot putt to send the U.S. Open into a playoff, or sinking a 45-foot triple break putt to win the tournament. It's just stupid things. I would say stupid things like that, but crazy things like that. Yeah. Crazy things like that, to be able to push your mind to be able to do it. And I think long drive is definitely a test of that, because if you can't push it further than what you think you're capable of, you'll never know how far you can get there and get to the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's shift topics a little bit. I want to ask about, so we talked a little bit about like kind of where the sport is now in terms of, like we said, 128 good hitters in the open division. You had the senior division, super senior, the ladies division was in Japan. Where do you see things going forward? I talked a little bit with Bobby and Ryan, and they didn't want to release too much of the details because a lot's up in the air. But kind of what do you see as the future here coming up for the PLDA?
I would like to continue on the. I think that we've set the groundwork for how. I don't want to say how hitters are expecting things to be, but I think that we've laid the groundwork to show the expectations of what things could be, as long as we continue to improve. Right? I love hearing criticism. I don't shy away from it. I think some people are scared to speak their mind. I hear a lot of stuff from other people, and I'm like, just tell us, you know what I mean, or just tell me. I'm not gonna bite your head off. Like, I'd rather know what we're doing wrong, so I can, or what you think we can improve, so we can try to improve it. And if it doesn't, and the hard thing for us is, as a competitor and as a business owner, right, is as a competitor, you want the best for yourself. You want to have the best opportunity. You want to, make sure that you have every advantage, or that you understand how everything's going to go to best win a golf tournament, right? But as a business owner, you have to think what's going to be the best and most fair way for 128 guys to be able to compete at a world championship level, at an elite level, to win a world championship. And I think we've done a pretty good job of walking that line, and setting up the expectations for players. Um, I would like to continue to grow the events to where we're in, venues where we have more local support, where we have national support. Like that's something that I know that we're working on to try to, to try to maintain and to try to build that as well, just because, we wanted to bring the grassroots level back. That's why we brought back qualifying and all that stuff like that. And, we just want to make it accessible for everybody who wants to go hit a golf ball far. We want them to be able to say, hey, I went and hit in a qualifier today, or I'm going to go hit in a qualifier next week, or hey, I'm going to try a long drive, and here's this event. Come show up and support me. You know what I mean? Or, these guys are doing really good things. Go support them. And it's, we've done it to where, we don't want to, Art asked us one year, go find sponsors. And I don't want it to be on the players' shoulders to do that, right? And honestly, sponsors are few and far between, especially in the world we live in now and the economy we live in now. They're very hard to come across, and the fact that they've been, some have been burned in the past for whatever reasons or whatnot. But I feel like we've laid the groundwork for a great player base and community. I think that our goal is to try to grow that as well, to try to grow the amount of hitters that we have, the tournaments or the availability for hitters to compete in, to either test their skills or, compete for titles, stuff like that. But that's something that we've taken pride in. I mean, when Golf Channel kind of, I don't want to say threw us by the wayside, but they did. I mean, if any, they did. They left us in the shitter. What can I say? And unfortunately, it took us a while to get to this spot, and it's taken a lot of hard work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and money, to be honest with you, to get it back to where it's at. And I think we're in the right direction. It's just a matter of maintaining the support from hitters, showing them that we're committed to making it bigger and better, and and continue to press forward, and hopefully something big will come out of that.
Well, one of the things I've always, and I've said it many times probably, so I don't want to sound like too much of a broken record, but one of the things that the PLDA has going for it that is invaluable is that you guys all are incredibly familiar with the sport as competitors, as coaches, as whatever. You all know what the sport needs. The good and bad of what can be portrayed and how to test people. And there's just, without that intimate knowledge, like if there was, and I'm not, going to name anyone in particular, but there was a couple of years ago or at some point in the long drive past. So to keep it as anonymous as possible, they wanted to film this little thing, and they're like, all right, well, why don't we do something a little different to showcase what long drivers can do? And so this one guy was like, hey, I'll go get a football and we'll put a football on a tee and we'll see how far you can hit that with your driver. And I was like, what? You want me to hit a football with my golf club? That's going to break my wrist, or it's definitely going to break the club. Yeah, the ball's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
But like you and Bobby and Ryan and Robbie and Seamus, like golf and long drive so well that you're really in a unique position, I think, to take the sport to a great place. So,
well, we appreciate it. And honestly, like, there's so many people, obviously it's us five that everybody sees that, running around, but there's so many other people, that volunteer and help us, at each and every event that, we'd spend an hour just naming off names and stuff that they've done. So, that's what, kind of long drive is about though too, like, is that community of people like, hey, what can I do to help? Or, hey, can I go put this flag over here? Or, hey, can I go get balls out of the trailer? I mean, there's just, I think one of the biggest things that we've done that I'm really proud of is the fact that we developed a live scoring system. And granted, it's not perfect, right? I still think that we can hone it and get it better, but for where it was at to where it is now, I think it's light years ahead of what we could have expected. And especially being on a no budget, being able to do it with very little budget was amazing. And I think having 2 successful world championships, obviously Bryson being a part of it, big shout out to him and his camp. They were a big, a big help. Obviously Kyle, bringing eyes to it. But other competitors like Martin and Ryan and Justin and Josh Koch and anybody else who posts and tags Pro Long Drive. It's not just them. It's everybody who posts and tags Pro Long Drive and talks about going to hit. It's helping spread the word of Long Drive to get it out to the masses. And I don't want it to die. I think we have great momentum. I think we have some really, really good momentum built up, and it's on us to just continue to press forward and make it happen and make it continue to be bigger and better. Well,
yeah, I think it's on a great path. This is going back a few minutes to I forget what you said that made me think of it, but kind of like on the mental side of things, as far as bringing out the best in a competitor, I was talking about this with somebody the other day. If you take going back to like a PGA Tour or Live Golf comparison, if you have somebody who's trying to Monday and trying to get into an event just really to be able to pay their bills, pay for their family, whatever it is, that brings out a totally different mental layer to your competition and to your needs and how to perform. How do you think that compares, from your experience versus someone on maybe Live Golf, if they're getting a nice signing bonus, if they're doing that, they kind of have more guaranteed money? Because I feel like from that perspective, you can just put on a show, your needs are met. So you can go out there and be an incredible entertainer and an athlete. But then if your back is up to a wall and you need to make a cut or you need to whatever in order to pay your bills, that sometimes some people will respond and do their best that way.
So I can speak to that really, really well because in 17 years, 18 years, whatever it is, I don't even know, I've never once had a paying sponsor because I never needed one. To me, in my mind, I was like, it's my money. Excuse me, it's my money. I'm going to put it up. And it's a different aspect when you know that you just put up, $600 for an entry fee, $400, $450 for a rental car, $400 or $500 for a plane ticket. You know what I mean? And you're $1,500 in the hole before you even hit a golf ball or put some food in your mouth by being there, not even including the hotel. When it's your own money and it's your own kind of if I don't win a check or make a check, or if I don't win, I'm going to be out potentially $1,500 to $2,000. And that's tough. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the things as a competitor, myself, Bobby, Ryan, experiencing that, we know what that feels like. Right. And there's a different aspect to it when it's like you said, when it's your back against the wall, you only have one place to go. You have to come out swinging. So for me, it was always, lock in mentally, lock in focus. I kind of say, put the blinders on, kind of block out any outside presence, and just go to work and just do what you need to do to try to do the best that you can possibly do and finish as high as you can possibly finish in a tournament to make a check up. Nobody goes to lose. Let's just make that clear. Nobody goes to play for second place. It is win or nothing. And, but when it is your own, I wouldn't say livelihood, because I feel like if somebody's, if they're going to come to a long drive event or not eat, that's just That's a decision they have to make, but I think that's a very dumb decision. You know what I mean? But, again, being $2,000 out, after entry fee, travel, all that stuff like that, and not making money is tough for guys to come back from. You know what I mean? But it also alludes to your point that you only got one way to come out when your back's against the wall. You only got one way to go.
Yeah. I was talking with Vince Papali, I think is how you say his last name.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the guy who walked onto the Eagles. And when they, that's unheard of. And they made a movie about it and everything like that. And I was explaining to him how like the Monday qualifying process works. And he was like, oh, I really like that. Like you have to put on your best for that. You have to show up for that moment and do your absolute best. And I get that argument and I agree with it. And like I said, I think when your back is to the wall, you're probably going to, fight in a different way. But I think if you look at the entertainment side of the sport and you consider that, yes, we're all going as competitors, but we're also going as entertainers. And I'm not just talking about long jump. I'm talking about really any sport or anything like that. To me, of course there will be individual variety again, but if you have kind of your needs met, I think you'll be a little bit better at entertaining. You'll be a little bit more free to be like an entertainer because you're up there and you're knowing like, hey, I want to put on a good show here. Yeah, I want to win. I want to put on a good show too. Versus like, I need to make this putt or hit the shot or whatever in order to, break even or make some money. And it's just a different mindset. So
absolutely,
it'll be interesting to see how the pro tournament side shakes out and then what else happens in long drive.
Yeah, no, I think that's two different, it's two different worlds in meshing into one, right? Because everybody wants to be entertained, and that's what technically long drive is. But you have like the core competitors, like Kyle, for instance, is a core competitor. You know what I mean? But Martin is more, where he's a competitor, right? Like everybody's a competitor, but like at the end of the day, Martin does better when he puts on a show. I think Jason Zubak was a core competitor, whereas Bobby Wilson was an entertainer. It all comes back to who or what works best for that person. Does a person have to be blinders, right, and strictly focused on what they have to do, or do they have to be loose and talk with competitors and talk to the crowd, get the crowd hyped up, you know what I mean, to be able to perform their best too, because it makes them relax. It's all individualized.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me finish with this question, and I just want to pull it off the top of your head. So if you had to pick one shot or moment in your long drive career as your absolute favorite or funniest or like most memorable, what would that be?
I have a couple actually, but so I'll give you two. Technically three, but two of them, two different tournaments. So the first one would be 2011 Mesquite Shootout. I lost to Mike Dobbin and should have beat him. He knows I should have beat him, but it is what it is. Like he'll tell you to this day that he'll be like, Gentry should have won, but he knows how long drive is, right? There's no friends up there. You take the wins. And I didn't hit the shot that I needed. But in the semifinals that day, Ryan Winther hit it like, I want to say like 423. And it was like the longest ball of the day. And it was crazy. Nobody did even come close. I think the longest ball at that point was like 405, something like that. He had a 23. And the way that it worked is we would do it match play, 3 balls, 3 balls, 3 balls, 3 balls. So he hit his first 3 balls, walked off, hit it like 423 or something like that. And he walked off and like looked at me and was like, catch that. Just as like we had been at each other all year. And I went up and I hit it like 426. And everybody that was watching, which, wasn't a lot, just was a tour event, but, just exploded when they called back the number. And I remember looking at him and he was just like, damn. Right. And so that was one. The other one is kind of funny. It was 2010 on ESPN. being taped, and literally topped it. I mean, literally topped the golf shot. And it was almost like people in the crowd were like, they didn't know what to do. Like there was like some like, and it was kind of quiet. And then like, I was like, I would just make yourself look like an absolute idiot. You know what I mean? Final 8 and you're topping golf shots here. And the next ball I hit it 401 and, you know, and everybody kind of went crazy. Like they were like, you redeemed yourself. You know what I mean? So those were two kind of like, two memorable. I have a lot of them.
I'm sure.
I have a lot of them. I mean, winning in 2017 when I beat Paul, I hit it 403, and I think the longest ball that day was like 401, 401 or 402. So hitting it 403 in the finals to beat Paul to actually win the event, that one was pretty memorable. So there's a lot, you know what I mean? But I think I'll probably say the one that people ask me all the time, what's the longest you've ever hit it? And I'm like, and I said, you know, to win a tournament? And they're like, yeah. I was like, I've won tournaments with like 320 and I've lost tournaments with 425. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it all depends. So I've had a lot of good ones. I've had a lot of bad ones, but I continue to do this crazy thing we call long drive. So
yeah. Hey man, I get it. That's something hard for people to kind of understand, how you can win at 320 and lose at 420. But
oh yeah,
conditions
they don't understand the format, right? Like they don't know. They're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like,
"Yeah."
I'm like, everything resets, you know. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I've said it on the show a number of times, but you're one of the people that stands out to me. Where like when I was just getting started, you were. Of course, we're going to be fierce competitors on the tee, like we've said, but you were very friendly to me right away. Like I think you introduced yourself to me at one of the first events that, you know, we ever met at. And of course, we've had a really good relationship over the last few years. And, you know, it's just great to have people in the sport that are like a flag bearer or whatever that, and of course you work with the PLDA for the PLDA. And, you know, but you're also a great competitor and you're really inviting to people and you get people off to the right start when they're just getting in. And it can be an intimidating thing because like you said, you have 128, you know, alpha personalities showing up and you can be like, whoa, I don't really, you know, like it here. But if you have then somebody comes up and they're like, hey man, thanks for coming out. Like good hitting, your swing looks great, whatever it is. It makes a huge difference in that person's perspective of the sport and their continuing it of the future. So thanks for that. And thanks for being on here today, man.
No, I appreciate you having me, man. I wish, you know, hopefully we can find 50 more like you that were brand new to it a few years ago and they stick around and continue to be one of the, you know, top competitors in the sport. So I appreciate you having me on though.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I'll see you probably in a few weeks, I'm sure down at Bobby's or something like that.
Yeah. The training starts for next year. So it never, you know, you take a couple of weeks off and you're right back to the drawing board. So
that's for sure. Well, thanks, man. Have a good one.
Thanks, man.
Bye, everybody.